You're listening to Titans of the Trades. I'm your host, Ryan England, author of Hire Better People Faster and creator of the CoreFit hiring system, a proven process to help growing companies attract and retain only the best. I'm on a mission to revolutionize the perception of the trades and elevate it to new heights. After growing up in a blue-collar family, my passion for making the trades cool again runs deep. If you're a Titan in the industry and want to be on my show, stick around until the end and I'll reveal how you can be my next guest. One of the biggest challenges that we run into when we meet construction company owners is that they lack strategy. They lack a plan for continued growth, for consistent, reliable growth. Today's guest will help you change that. I'm your host, Ryan England. Welcome back to another episode of Titans of the Trades. Today, I sit down with Chad Prinkey. He's with Well-Built Consulting, and think of him as your fractional strategy officer, someone to really help you get everything you want from your business by looking at the entire business, everything from sales and marketing to operations, production, and finally, the finances. All right, he's got some great tips. One that I really latched onto and I thought was amazing. So get ready for this great episode. I want to introduce Chad Prinkey with Well-Built Consulting. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you having me.
Now, I know that you have worked with companies all over and you've probably seen so many things. There's not enough to talk about in a show like this. What I'd love to do, though, is I want to bring value to our listeners. And you are a subject matter expert working in the construction industry. And so I would love to know if you could just share a little bit about who you are and what you do. And then let's jump into some of the biggest challenges that we're seeing in the industry right now.
Yeah, let's do it. So I am the founder of a consulting firm that only works with the construction industry. We work with trade contractors, general contractors, some service contractors, and also what's been kind of cool is working with owner developers and understanding really the whole life cycle there. We're based in the Metro DC area, but we have offices across the country in Dallas and in Chicagoland, and more to come. So we are we're a growing group of about 10 folks today, and figure we'll probably be about 15 this time next year.
Nice. I love that. Well, there's a lot of people out there that need your support, need your help. I was telling you earlier, it seems like 1 out of 2 people I talk to that own a construction company are like, if there was another way to take care of my family, it would probably be doing that, not doing construction. Talk to me. What are some of the challenges that you and your team are seeing out there right now? The things that, everybody thinks maybe they're alone in this, but they don't realize, hey, you and everybody else is dealing with these same things. What are some of those things you're seeing?
It's a tough industry to make a buck.
It is.
It's a tough industry to make a buck. There's a lot of, I think the balancing act particularly for self-perform contractors that carry a lot of salaries and people and risk, is that you have this constant, we have to have the staff to do the work when we're busy. And it's really stressful when we don't have the work because now we have all this, essentially your direct costs turn into overhead without getting into a bunch of accounting stuff. Right?
Yeah,
but
I know what you're saying.
But your direct costs turn into overhead. And I was just on the phone this morning with an awesome friend and client of ours that has been having a great year. Right. They've been having a fantastic 2024, and they're projected to have a slow couple of months. And it's like, oh my God, it could drain all your profits and all those good things that we were doing, and all the, the money that we were actually finally setting aside, looks like it may go away, for these last couple of months. We'll turn that all those months of a positive into a couple months of negative that take a bite out of it. So whether it's a slow time or whether it's a bad job or, like those types of things, it's one of those industries that just, everything could be going for you. And then you wake up and poof, you're in trouble. You got a bad job or you got a gap in your schedule and now you're carrying guys. And next thing you know, your projected profit of 10% net at the end of the year turns into 4%. And then you do 4% on $100 million and you're like, why am I doing this? Right? Like to your point, there are so many easier ways to make a buck. Why am I even doing this? Right. And then you write the government their big old fat piece of it. And then your bonding company tells you have to retain another big old fat piece of it. You're like, you know what? Never mind. I guess I won't pay myself this year.
Yeah. I don't need to make a living. Support my family.
And that's the part. So I work with owners, not exclusively, but that's, if you take a look at my staff and where we all sort of play in the team, I'm talking almost 80% of my time is with owners, shareholders. And then we're working with their management teams, executive teams, things like that. That just tends not to be where I spend my time. So understand that's where my perspective comes from, is from the owner's perspective.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest challenge for owners is getting everything to fire on all cylinders at one time for any stretch of freaking time so that the company actually makes the money in reality that it should on paper. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd probably be easier if people didn't run construction companies, but then what's the point, right?
If robots ran companies
because they only do what you tell them to do. And I know there's people thinking if they would just do what I tell them.
It's true, but there's when I start to pull this apart, right, Ryan, and I start thinking about like, why is it so darn hard? I think at its core, yes, there's certainly a human element. There's definitely a leadership element, but there's a key piece of it where we have got to, as owners, we have got to step back and we've got to empower and we've got to push through the fear and get other people handling the business. So, in each of these key functions, otherwise we will constantly find ourselves saying, I'm working way too hard and making not enough money. What if you weren't working way too hard? How would that change the way you felt? And it does change the way these guys feel. And I've seen that 100, when you're working 80 hours a week and it's still hard to string it together, that makes you want to throw things.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But when you're working 20 hours a week and it's not all perfect, but it's going well, you got to be honest with yourself and say, you know what, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. And I have a lot more patience with that kind of work-life balance and so on. And so yeah, there's a classic term in business. It's not just a construction business term, but I certainly think it applies to our industry, is the valley of death that businesses have to push through. And that valley of death is that point where owners stop managing everything themselves and they make these investments to go from an owner founder operated company to an owner founder owned company, but a company that's operated by an executive and management team. And that takes a little time and it takes a little effort. But the juice is worth the squeeze. And that's the majority of what we spend our time doing, is helping companies to get through that valley.
Yeah. Yeah. We do something similar over here because we find that often the owners, are the ones back out on the job site. They're the ones that are filling in when they can't find a superintendent, or they're the one project managing a job, or they're the one out estimating, or they're doing those things because either they don't have the right people, they don't trust the people, they don't communicate well with the people. Like these people don't know what's expected of them. And like, how can they not read my mind? Why are they not like me? Right? Like I hear that so many times. I'm like, there are people like you. They're your competition. They're not your employee, right? So what are some of the things that you guys look at to help people start getting through that valley of death? Because I know it's not something where it's like do X, Y, and Z and it's done, right? It's a process. But
It is.
how do you help them wrap their head around that idea that this is something I have to commit to and stick with long term?
I could and probably will, I'm sure, to a degree, repeat myself, or repeat great advice that other people have shared on your show,
Sure.
and and those types of things. But I'm going to try to focus on some of the things that I think maybe don't get as much airplay. One, I have a rule that I always teach leaders, not just owners, but leaders of all types. If you're going to do something that truly somebody else ought to be doing, because it has to be done, and I understand it, I get it. You're doing these submittals on this job, and this should totally be handled by the project manager, but the project manager's new, and they don't know what they're doing, and you're going to have to step in and do it. If you're going to do something that you shouldn't be doing, some people need to be watching. So the rule is never do somebody else's job alone. Right? And that's something that is a very tangible, really specific action step that I found makes a huge impact. That you're all frustrated. You're like, I'm doing these goddamn submittals. I got to get them done. I'm just bang them out. I shouldn't have to do this. This is frustrating. Yada yada. But you're sitting there at 7:00 at night by yourself doing it. If your PM's not sitting there with you, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
That's an example of the type of stuff that really helps people to cross the chasm. Because there's like the big stuff, and it's super important. And I'm not gonna tell you it's not, which is you gotta document your standard operating procedures. You've got to get those SOPs put into a system that works, and you've got to get a training program in place that teaches people how to do the thing that you need them to do to execute and uphold your brand promise at a high level. That's really at the core, like the musts. But when it comes to operationalizing that stuff, a simple rule like, don't do somebody else's job alone. It is the stuff that really makes this thing, that really makes it click.
Yeah, I love that. I call those traps sometimes to our owners. Like, how do you trap yourself into making sure you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing? And, we teach a little more technologically advanced process for that, but I like the simplicity of don't do someone else's job alone. And, one of the things that we found that especially more technologically astute owners, ones that really have embraced technology, I tell them, go get a $12 tripod from Amazon, set up your phone, and record yourself doing the work. Think out loud while it's recording. Let it run for 3 hours. I don't care, especially with AI now.
I was going to say, feed it into AI and have AI turn it into
your SOP for how to do it your way every single time. But it requires a little bit more, more embracing of technology, which I know not everybody's done, but it's coming. It's here.
It is.
But I love that. Don't do it alone. And you could even have that PM that's sitting there watching you. They're recording it, you know?
Yep. All I'm telling you is yes, totally record, absolutely record and warehouse and make searchable, all those types of things, because you don't want to have to do this 90 times as you grow your business. Right. But, I do find that having that in-person, why did you do it this way? Wait, hold on. What was that? Type of stuff is often the difference between somebody, being here's somebody being told what to do and somebody truly learning what to do. And this is one of the other pointers that I would give out is like, if you ever find yourself saying, I've told them how to do this 100 times. The telling is the problem.
Yeah.
That's not necessary. First off, it's not how people learn comprehensively. That's just one little piece of it. Some people are amazing. You tell them the thing and they're like, wow, I get it. And they just go and immediately do it. Most people are not that special. Most people, need more than just being told, oh, I was told how to do it. You have to put more effort into getting people the knowledge they need, the skills they need, and then the habits or tools that they need so that it becomes easy for them. If you're ever finding yourself frustrated, like, I swear my people make the same mistakes over and over and over again, I hate to say this, like, I'm not trying to make people feel bad, but like, stop beating them up and look at yourself and be like, what can I do to stop that? I promise it's not, your people are not specially terrible. Your people, right? You don't have the worst people. And on a flip side, sorry to tell you, most people are pretty average. And so you probably don't have the best ones either. It's not like your competition has the best people and you have the crappy ones.
Yeah.
That's not what's going on out there. You all have some good, some average, some not, some less good people, but most people are average. That's kind of the definition of average. And what you need to do is make sure that your company is a place where average people can thrive and look amazing.
Yeah. I like to tell people, I say, when someone messes something up, look at your SOP, look at your process. Did they follow your process?
That's right.
If they followed your process, they are not the problem. Now, there's people out there that they've said this to me. They're like, what process? That might be the first place to start. Because if they don't know what you expect of them, if they don't know how, I like to say, if they don't know how to put points up on the scoreboard because they don't know how you're measuring them, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that's crystal clear.
Totally agree, Ryan. And this is all part of the Valley of Death. So I've heard it elsewhere called, gosh, I can't remember the book that this came from. Yeah, I can. There's a book called Simple Numbers, Real Profits, something.
Simple Numbers at Crabtree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great book. I love that book. Super simple, great way to talk about money, but that's not why I bring it up. He calls it the Badlands in that book. He doesn't call it the Valley of Death. He calls it the Badlands, right? But it's all part and parcel of the Badlands, or the Valley of Death, which is, when you start your business, you don't need or have a whole bunch of SOPs. It's a personality run business, and you're primarily the personality. It's a handful of really good or smart people who are deeply committed to making the business successful. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 6, but it's a relatively small group of people that are really making the thing work. And it's just you being amazing humans that communicate well together and have good experience that is making that business successful. So successful, in fact, that you start winning a whole bunch of work. So much work, in fact, that the 6 of you can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
And now that the 6 of you can't handle it anymore, you can't just be like, well, we'll just hire another amazing person. No, you won't. Sorry, that's statistically unlikely. Statistically, you're going to hire an average person. Right? And that's okay. They can be great. You can set them up to be fantastic, but they don't have the same experiences. They don't have the same, communication skills that you had with your team and all those types of things. And so, to your point, when the answer is what process, that is part and parcel of the Valley of Death. You're making a transition from being a people-run business to a process-run business, and for a lot of people, honestly, like, they're not interested in that, and that's okay too. I think it's okay. You just then can't take on more work. Stay in appropriate size.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the 4% at 10 million doesn't go nearly as far as the 4% at 100 million. If your net income's not great, but now you can work on efficiency, you can work on improvement, you can work on getting that 4 to 10 or 15 or 20.
And this is what I was going to say, Ryan, is that what I find is that when it is that 6-person business and we stay in our sweet spot and we say, you know what, screw this, we don't want to grow. You can run, I'm making up numbers, right? But you can run a $10 million business at an incredible profit margin because you have very minimal overhead. You're a well-oiled machine, but also don't lie to yourself about what you have. You don't have a company, you have a job. The 6 of you have built a job for yourselves, and that's cool. Yep. There's nothing wrong with giving yourself a cool, well-paying job. just when it's time to hang it up, the business will close.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. There's nothing left to, there's nothing to hand down. There's no wealth that's been created. You've just created a good job and hopefully a good income for yourself where you were your own boss for, 20 years or 30 years. And there are a lot of businesses that do go that route. And frankly, Ryan, should go that route. And that's a part of why one of the things I size up quickly with companies, I'm like, you don't want to grow. That's okay. You don't have to grow. Maybe you just, but here's what I've also found is that even in those companies, if we started talking really about like creating efficiency, we'd probably be doing a lot of the same stuff that we'd be doing if we were trying to grow. Magically, that sense of like, I don't want to grow can disappear once we realize this is actually, now we have a business that's growth ready. And what I love doing, and this is like our very first thing that we do when we engage with a client, is we evaluate their readiness to grow. And we'll straight up tell them like, hey, you got 2 years before we want to see you do a penny more. Because growth creates problems when a company's not ready for it.
Absolutely. This was years ago. I had a client and husband and wife team, and he's on one page for growth. They were about 150 employees at the time. He's like 700 employees, multi-state, all that. And she's like, I want to go back to when we were 50 employees. Like, they were so far apart. And so the original plan was, okay, we'll grow a little bit. We'll stay in one state, and that's what we'll do. We'll be happy. And now they are 5 years later, and they're like, they've scaled way back. They're half the size. They're happier. They have more money. They have more time freedom. They have better relationships with their team. Like, it's ultimately, that's what they wanted. And so, yeah, I get that. Sometimes we have to get really clear on that. One of the first things we do with people is we sit down and we say, okay, let's talk about your culture. What's your vision for this? Where are you going? How do you guys behave? Because when you were talking about that 6-employee company, it got me thinking, that's another reason. So you're talking about the SOP side and the doing the work side. I often hear people like, oh, why don't people show up on time? Why don't they care? Why don't they clean up the job site? Why aren't they safe? And that's a culture issue. Well, when you're the owner and you're out there being the example of the culture, it's really easy for everybody to go, I'm going to do what the boss does. But as soon as there's another boss that's not you, you've got a foreman in the field or a superintendent in the field, and you're not instilling in them that same type of culture, that's a whole nother side of it. That's why a whole separate episode, Chad, where we just talk about really that and how you transfer that and pass that on.
Yeah, it really is. I completely agree with that assessment. And culture, it drives, I mean, if you're gonna grow, you're gonna see your culture in all of its good, bad, and ugly on a very large scale as you grow. If you weren't sure what your culture was, you're about to see it. You know what I mean? When you start to grow, and hopefully it's wonderful. Yeah. But that takes work. It takes being intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, like you said, that growth is going to create problems. It is going to really put a magnifying glass on some of the issues that you might have been able to cover up as an owner-operated company that you can't anymore.
That's right.
And so it can get really bad really fast. I've seen that happen, especially when you bring really hyper growth to an organization. You land that this is a life-changing contract, right? That kind of stuff can be really scary. And
I didn't say how life, whether it would be a good or bad change.
Yeah.
But it is like.
Exactly. Chad, this has been great. I mean, so many things to dig into, so many things to think about, but I love that idea of really getting out of the business a little bit more, but making sure that you don't do someone else's job alone. Like, to me, that's the big takeaway from today. I thought that was so great. And just, it's so simple too, right? And so simple. And you can have that dialogue. You can have that conversation. You can go, oh, I had no idea people were asking this question, right? All the things that can come out of that one little simple exercise. That has been amazing. Chad, how can people learn more about you, what you're up to, and how to get a hold of you?
So they can jump on our website, which is wellbuiltconsulting.com. They can check out my book, which is called Well Built. It's on Amazon. It is, so far so good. It's been pretty well received. We're happy with the returns there. I was genuinely concerned it was not good.
Yeah.
When I wrote it, I'm sure you can relate. You write a book and you're like, oh God, I hope this is not bad. But the market seems to like it. And you can all connect with me and follow me on LinkedIn. My name is Chad Prinkey. That's Prinkey. It's a weird name. I think there's like 70 of us in the U.S.
No, that's great. We'll have that information in the show notes as well. Chad, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, that one little nugget was a huge takeaway for me. So I hope our listeners got that as well.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Ryan England here. Thank you so much for listening to Titans of the Trades. If you're a titan in the construction, manufacturing, or skilled trades industry and would like to be a guest on my show, please visit podcast.corematters.com. If you found value in this interview, would you share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot on your phone and share it with a friend or post it on social. And if you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Titans of the Trades. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, click the subscribe button. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and get me one step closer to solving the labor crisis facing the industry. Want to know more about how we're doing that? Go to our website or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.